Hello, fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today I'm going to be talking about a short story by Algernon Blackwood called The Other Wing. And I found this story in this anthology called The Devil's Generation. I grabbed this last week at my local bookstore, just at first because I absolutely loved the front cover. And I didn't realize this when I bought it at the time, that it was a Frank Frazetta painting. So, of course, it's really an incredible cover. This is a Lancer paperback. And the second reason I bought it is because it has Ray Bradbury, Richard Matheson, Robert Bloch, August Derleth, Robert Silverberg, Clifford Simak, Henry Kuttner, and Algernon Blackwood. And Algernon Blackwood, his is the last story in here, and I read it first, mainly because I've heard great things about Algernon Blackwood, and I haven't read him yet, and I've read almost everybody else in this book, so I wanted to start with his, because I hadn't read him yet, and also because Virgil at Literally Books made a video a while ago about The Willows, which is by Algernon Blackwood, and it's an incredible video, and I just wanted to check out something by Algernon Blackwood. I'll put a link to his video about The Willows down in the description. Once you're done with this, if you're interested in more Algernon Blackwood, that's where I would head. And while you're there, give him a subscription. He is almost to 1,000. It's getting very, very exciting. He's in the final stretch for hitting that 1,000. I think he needs something like 34 subscribers to hit that point. So I'm going to give a quick synopsis of this without spoilers. But I want to read you the first line because it is such a well-crafted and catchy first line. It used to puzzle him that after dark, someone would look in round the edge of the bedroom door and withdraw again too rapidly for him to see the face. So this story is about a young man named Tim. I think he's somewhere between 8 and 10. And he lives in a mansion, like Downton Abbey style mansion. He's very well off. He has governesses and nurses that take care of him around the clock. And this is the story of him falling asleep and the strange happenings that occur to him while he is trying to fall asleep. So his nurse always tucks him in, says, "Good night, Master Tim," takes the candle and leaves. And directly after this, he has a bit of a hard time going to sleep. I know now that probably a lot of us fall asleep to screens. I try not to, but I will read until I get tired. But in between falling asleep, I'll scroll for a bit. But I do remember the time when you just kind of laid there and looked around until you fell asleep and kind of looked at the dark. And this is what Tim does. And at first he tries to count objects on his wallpaper, like I think it was dogs and a couple other things, but he tries to match up to see the exact same amount of each of them, and then he'll look at the fire for a while, and then he'll slowly start to fall asleep. And Algernon Blackwood, I'm just going to say right here, has incredible prose. Not only is this easy to read, it is full of image, and his detail. It is hard to capture being scared while falling asleep. That's a hard thing to do. And I think that Algernon Blackwood is incredible at it because he starts listing all these inconsistencies. And he starts, and this is from the kid's point of view, the kid starts thinking that perhaps all of these inconsistencies are being controlled by this thing that is haunting him. And so the fact that he can't find the same amount of dogs as everything else on his wallpaper, because one's hidden behind the curtain and something is moving the curtain. The curtain is not moving itself. The curtain is being moved. And then he looks at the fireplace, and the dropping of the burnt coals in the fireplace seem like somebody's poking the fire. But most importantly, right before he falls asleep out of his peripheral vision, he constantly, night after night, sees this thing pop its head into the doorway and then pull back. And the way it's described is the thing is blurry, it's soft, it's unable to be seen. But he knows it's there because it will keep its hand around the door frame for a while. Really, really terrifying. And as he talks about it more, he says that he'll sometimes wake up in the night and he'll feel like this thing is standing by his bed, and that it never really walks, it glides, and he feels like it has wings. And when he wakes up and he senses that it's standing around his bed, he feels like that there are other things standing around the bed with him, and that they seem like it's children or smaller versions of it. I was really on the edge of my seat while I was reading this. It was truly scary fiction. The kind that gets you excited, that you read through and it doesn't feel like a chore at all to read through it. Just really incredible work. During the day, the boy talks to his parents, trying to figure out exactly what this thing is that's haunting him. And eventually he becomes obsessed with the other wing in the house. And this is a wing that is of the house that is closed up, that he's not allowed to go to. Nobody goes into the old wing of the house. And this is the story of him venturing into the other wing. I've already talked about Algernon Blackwood's brilliant prose. The plotting is also incredible. The character development is great. And I think the themes of this story are really what stuck out for me. Just before I move on any further, I do want to say that I highly recommend this writer. For me, he is going to go up with Ambrose Bierce as just an incredible writer of his time. And in the weird fiction canon, right now for me, Ambrose Bierce and Algernon Blackwood are kind of tied for the top, with H.P. Lovecraft and Robert W. Chambers kind of holding the second position, and then August Derleth holding the third. I have not read any Robert E. Howard, which I'm going to read my first Howard in the coming week, and that will be The Tower of the Elephant. So look forward to my review on that. Man, I'm having fun just reading all these weird fiction authors. It's been a riot. Okay, so yes, I highly recommend this. If you want to start with his most popular works, start with The Willows or The Wendigo, two that I haven't read. I just, like I said, randomly picked one out of an anthology I just happened to get. But I am going to read those. I'm really looking forward to them. But what really surprised me about this, and this isn't really spoilers, but it's kind of the beginning of spoilers. So if you want to read this, then maybe stop the video here and go give it a read and come back. I looked for a horror babble of this and I couldn't find one. I don't know if that means there isn't one. The YouTube search I've grown to not trust at all. But when I did search for it, I found a ton of people reading this on YouTube. So if you would like to, you can just go. It looks like it's like 45 minutes, I think. Maybe it was an hour and 45. It's like 20 pages. So what really surprised me about this is that this was the story of a haunting, but not really. It turned into an incredible fantasy with kind of fairy tale-like stylings, which is a genre I absolutely love. And while I was reading this, the artist that I thought of that he most reminded me of was George MacDonald, who was a contemporary of Lewis Carroll, who wrote these incredible fairy tales that should be way more popular than they are now. George MacDonald, incredible writer, really love him. Did a kind of early fantasy stuff where he took fairy tale motifs and started turning them into fantasy. And I feel like Algernon Blackwood is doing something similar here. So, spoilers to follow. Number one, he doesn't feel like the thing haunting him wants to do him any harm. He feels like it is checking in on him and making sure that he is okay. He doesn't know quite what to make of it, so he goes, I think, to his, I can't remember if he goes to his father first. He might go to his governess and then his father, but he goes to his father and is telling his father about it. And his father is very busy keeping the house up. So he says, go speak to your mother. And he goes and he talks to his mother. And there's a wonderful scene where the mother's knitting and reading at the same time. And the kid's like blown away how skilled she is to be able to do those two things at once. But she puts everything down. First she puts her knitting down, and then she closes up her book and holds him. And he tells her about it, and she says, the father originally said this, and she agrees with him. Or maybe she brought it up, I can't remember. Anyway, she says, maybe this is the dream. This is dreams coming to pick you up, the Dream King. I can't remember exactly what she called him. Yeah, she just says, perhaps they're dreams. Like these are the personification of dreams. And the boy really grabs on to this, that somehow the personification of all dreams lives in his house. And then he becomes obsessed with this concept that the personification of all dreams live in the other wing of his house, which is the wing that nobody goes into, that's closed down. So eventually he starts looking for a way to get into the other wing, and an opportunity presents itself. He's in his father's study, which he's not really allowed in, and he takes this special cane that was his grandfather's cane. That's kind of a family heirloom. His dad loves it, and he really loves it. And he takes this cane and he's walking around, and they say the cane is up to his shoulder, so he has to walk around like with his arm all the way up here with this cane. And suddenly there's a door into the other wing that has never been there before. And it looks like somebody's just gone into it. And he suddenly gets this idea that his grandfather is in the other wing, and that his grandfather wants his cane back. So he goes into the other wing, and the first thing that he is presented with is the corridor of nightmares. And he has to walk down this corridor with all these doors with terrors behind them, and eventually make it to this large room. And before he goes down the corridor, as he gets a little ways into the corridor, the thing that's been peeking in at him at night, every night, appears behind him. And the description of this personification of dreams is incredible. It's this being that is too big for him to see. Like the head of this being disappears in the clouds, and eventually it takes in this on the size of the entirety of the other wing, but also walks down the hallway with him, protecting him. Really well written images of this personified idea. It's really incredible. So he makes it to the main room, and his grandfather is there, and he gives his grandfather the cane, and his grandfather is fading away, so some of his words are caught and some of his words aren't, and he seems happy, but there's also this kind of fear that starts to creep in, and eventually he is able to turn and go back out of the other wing. And then his life rushes on, and we get a denouement right at the end where he talks about growing up, getting married, taking over the house. He opens up the other wing, and the way Algernon Blackwood puts it is he slowly starts to not believe anymore. And one night he is in bed, and suddenly his door opens and his grandfather comes in, pointing the cane at him, and he freaks out and jumps up and wakes up and realizes it was all a dream. But when he wakes up, he can smell fire, and it's just started. He was woken in perfect time to be able to go and put out the fire so that very little damage happened. Basically saves his family and the house and everybody in it. So the grandfather kind of repays this bravery. Simple story, but an incredibly complex story, because, like I said, Algernon Blackwood writes layer after layer of image. This is one of these things that I'm not going to be able to describe to you. You're going to have to go read it and see how wonderfully visual this writer's writing is. I can't wait to read more of this. I gotta read The Willows and Wendigo just to see this, because I mean, listening to Virgil in the video that I've linked below talking about The Willows, I think he gets to a similar point where he's just like, the haunting is not in what's occurring, it's in how beautiful the prose is and how well this is described. And in the end, in my opinion, the main theme, the heart of this story, is the concept of childhood wonder, which is why I think it reminds me so much of George MacDonald, and why I think of it more of a fantasy than a horror story. And on the cover of this, right away I was like, this is a horror anthology, but on the cover it says a Lancer Science Fantasy Original. So I don't think they thought of it as horror, even with that list of writers and that incredible cover. But this is more of a fantastic piece. It's a fantasy, I think. And childhood wonder. It's strange. So ever since, I think I've talked about this on videos before. I know I did, and I can't remember which one. But anyway, I have a reoccurring dream that has been occurring for most of my life that I can remember. And it always is situated around a house. And I'm in this house, and I start going, I think I start going down into the basement, and there's all of these rooms. There's just room after room, and this house keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm exploring this house, and there's a feeling associated with it which is impossible to describe. And this book, as he's going into the other wing, brought all those dreams back up for me. And I think that Blackwood is able to capture the essence of that unnameable emotion that childhood wonder gives us. I used to visit my cousin a lot, and there was a house across the street that the person that lived there let the backyard just grow wild. And I remember we went back there, even though we weren't allowed when we were kids, and explored that backyard. And the grass was like taller than we are. Not the grass, but the rye that grows out there. And we were threading through it. And in my brain, that small area is a huge landscape that I explored for hours. And it really was not, but it felt like that as a child. And that is such a hard thing to capture. And very few writers are able to capture something that we all know but can't explain in such a wonderful way as Algernon Blackwood did this. For me, I would put this up there with Lafferty's The North Shore, I think, Configurations of the North Shore, which is another story that I feel describes something that we all experience. Maybe that was the video where I talked about my house dreams. I bet it was. Where Lafferty is able to describe something that we all are familiar with but cannot describe ourselves, that tongue tie us when we try to describe it. And I think that's one of the things that make writers really great. So Algernon Blackwood hit it out of the park. I am shocked at how good this is. Cannot wait to read more Algernon Blackwood in the future. Go read it. If you've never read any of his work, go read it. I think that you would enjoy it. If you've read his work and like him and have never read The Other Wing, go check it out. Really incredible story. All right, I think that's all I can say about that. If you like this video, please click like, subscribe, comment if you'd like to help support the channel more. We do have a Patreon where I record videos exclusively for that platform, as well as putting up all the videos I put up here early and without commercials. So go give it a look, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.